G'day, I'm Paul. So a lot of people need a dual cab ute for work or for pleasure, but they don't want to spend mega bucks. So today, I want to see whether it is worth spending less money on a Chinese dual cab ute like the JAC T9. It's just been launched in Australia. Pretty good spec on paper. I want to put it up against a more expensive dual cab ute in the HiLux, which is kind of the benchmark in this segment for load hauling and just doing all your work stuff pretty straightforwardly day in, day out. I'm going to do some driving on our hill road with a lot of weight in the rear of these. Then we're going to go do a torture test on Belgian pave and then a rough road that was specifically built to destroy cars. So we're going to see how these two both perform and whether you are actually going to end up saving money in the long run. Now, before we start on the hill road, let me explain what I've done here. Both of these vehicles are loaded up with the same amount of weight, and that amount of weight is the GVM of the HiLux, because this has a bigger payload, has a little bit more headway, but we've put the same amount of weight in. And funnily enough as well, you'll see that this is a 500 kilo block sitting on a pallet. Well, we tried to do the same in the HiLux, but a pallet doesn't actually fit in the tray of a HiLux. So we've got a pallet here, and then the HiLux is loaded with bags so that we have the same amount of weight and a similar weight distribution in each as well. Let's hop in and we'll go for a drive on our hill road and see how these perform in terms of the ride with some load in the tray. Okay, so we are setting off in the HiLux first. Given this is kind of the benchmark in this segment, I thought we'll start off with this and see how it goes. This is at GVM, which means it is at maximum capacity. You cannot have a kilo more in this car without being over its capacity. So it'll be interesting to see how the JAC compares to, which is the JAC? I don't know, I'm just going to call it the JAC, it's just easier how it compares to the HiLux. So just as a reminder as well, HiLux, they recently updated this and the SR that we're driving now comes with the optional 48 volt mild hybrid system that gives you a little bit of power boost and helps with stop start. Throughout the hill road here, this is basically the road that we use to test SUVs, dual cab utes, and we've used it in a number of big comparisons that we've done. Kind of just represents an Australian country road effectively, and it gives us a good variety of hills, including a 15% gradient, which is really going to put these to the test when it comes to acceleration. I'll also run you through suspension feel. So as we set off here in the HiLux has always been a vehicle that feels significantly better when it's loaded with weight. You know, it's a typical sort of sensation with a leaf-sprung vehicle, and in this instance here, it's the exact same. Once you round it up to GVM, it is actually really nice and comfortable, and I'm sort of getting that vibe here. So we've got a hairpin down the bottom here, and this sort of takes us out into a pretty steady and steep climb. This will be a good indication of what torque is like out of here. So here we go, I'll give this a little punch. Yeah, very good. So I'm flat to the board now. Feels quite strong and confident. Now, it's not pulling your face off here, especially when it is loaded up as much as it is, but it is sort of moving along really nicely. So very impressed with this so far. And you know, the thing is, I don't expect the JAC to be significantly better than the HiLux. Well, it might be, I don't know, haven't driven it yet, but I don't expect it to be significantly better, but it is significantly cheaper with more features. So I want it to be at least as good and feel as comfortable with this kind of load in it. Okay, so here comes our hill. Round this up, 15% grade. It's really nice and steep, and we'll stand on the throttle and see how we go here. Yeah, nice it is. Pulling along very nicely, accelerating as you'd expect. Yeah, very good. No dramas there at all, and then as we reach the top, it sort of it starts pulling away. So yeah, look, very impressive there in terms of acceleration, and the ride so far has been really good. One of the things I find really strange is just there with the tray, that you can fit a pallet in the JAC and a lot of other modern utes today, but you still can't do it in the HiLux. And we now know that the next generation of HiLux appears to share the same platform as this generation, which means it will just be a little while longer that you just won't be able to fit a pallet into your dual cab ute, which I reckon is just crazy. Okay, so last bit of our test here on the hill road is the bumpy section, which we do at around 60 k's an hour. It just gives us a good sort of bumpy stretch that you could experience out in the country to see what it feels like. So I might do it at 70, we'll just see how that goes. So here it comes. Yeah, just feels nice and comfortable here in the HiLux. So, all right, let's hop into the JAC and just see how that performs. Okay, we have set off in the JAC. Let's see how this goes. It's actually fairly quiet engine compared to the HiLux. That's the first sort of thing I'm noticing. Like, you do hear it inside the cabin, but it's not as sort of intrusive. Gearbox feels pretty good as well. So they're two pretty decent notes. So let's see how it goes. We've got a little hill coming up here. So it's 3/4 throttle. Yeah, look, it's pulling along pretty recently. It doesn't have that same punch as the HiLux. It's just over 400 Newton meters compared to 500 in the HiLux, but it doesn't sort of feel completely underdone. It still actually feels like it's sort of moving along quite nicely. I'm noticing here as well the ride, as we sort of come down into our hairpin, the ride actually feels really good. I didn't love the ride on the way here when it was unladen. It was a bit busy, but again, like the HiLux, once you stick some weight in it, really settles down nicely. I can feel it doing some engine braking there as it rolls back through the gears. It's obviously noticed that we are sort of on hilly terrain. Let's see what it's like out of our little gully here. Get onto the throttle. Yeah, nice. It's accelerating really nicely. Yeah, it was surprising. I was expecting it to be a lot slower than this in terms of its pickup. It does have a lower towing capacity, so I think if we did actually stick 3.2 tons on the back of this compared to 3.5 with the HiLux, you'd probably feel it doesn't sort of get along as nicely. But here at the HiLux's GVM, and still with a bit of capacity, it actually moves along fairly well. Okay, here is our hill, the 15% grade. Do the same thing as the HiLux. We'll just roll into the throttle there and just see how it goes. All right, so it's kick back, hard on the gas. I mean, it's still pulling along really well. So there's 60 k's an hour. Let's grab the next gear, it's still pulling. And then we're gonna crest the hill now as well. Yeah, I mean, gotta be honest, the SR is kind of a basement level spec of the HiLux. So you're getting cloth seats. It really doesn't have a great deal of features. You have to step up to SR5 to really get it close to what this offers. And that's a big price difference. And to me, I don't feel that price difference when it comes to doing this type of thing, which is load hauling and working the vehicle. You just do not notice that level of difference. So it is one of those things, you're going to pay extra for the brand name, but do you necessarily need to? If you're not too fussed about the brand name, this is feeling like it does kind of the same thing when it comes to hauling. Okay, we're coming into the bumpy section. I think it is worth pointing out, no paddle shifters. I would like to see paddle shifters. It's not a sports car, but when it comes to towing, being able to row back through the gears without having to, faff around with gear levers and stuff, I think would just be a much easier thing to have. So probably something they can address in a future update. Alrighty, here comes the bumpy section. We'll do this at 70 as well and just see what this feels like. And it's surprisingly good. It's got a little bit of bounce on the front end there, but it feels quite settled and just inoffensive. So yeah, look, from a comparative standpoint, I don't see the big price difference between these two when it comes to doing this type of work. This actually just feels pretty capable and just as comfortable, if not more comfortable than the HiLux. Okie dokie, now it's time for a little bit of torture testing. And we're going to use some of the durability sections here on the proving ground. And we're going to use Belgian pave plus a custom constructed road that is designed to genuinely destroy cars. So Belgian pave is basically a paved road from Belgium, effectively, but it's just designed to accelerate wear on suspension components, and this one has been built to a global standard for the previous manufacturer that used to own this proving ground. It was a General Motoring company, if you get what I mean. So basically we're going to do 2 laps on Belgian pave of 40 k's an hour. Then we're going to head over to the torture test road. So this is a 2-kilometre stretch of road that was designed to exceed the stress that the Belgian pave puts on a car. And this is where you have to hold on. Another manufacturer that was here doing vehicles. And basically this road is one that was used since to start with. But also we're going to be measuring how many G's are put through the seat of the car using the accelerometer on the iPhone. Then later on, we're going to sit down and have a look at the numbers and see which vehicle was more comfortable from an actual scientific numbers point of view. We're going to do 2 laps of the Belgian pave and also of the torture test road in both vehicles, and then we'll see how it all goes. But let's kick off with the HiLux. 40 k's an hour on Belgian pave. All right, so nice and quiet and comfortable now. And then the rough stuff begins. So what I'll be listening out for here is just any weird noises inside the cabin, outside of, keys and all that sort of stuff that's in here. We want to make sure that after doing just this basic session that the cars are still holding up okay and no weird rattles or squeaks have presented themselves. Last time we did this with the Mahindra pickup and the 70 series Land Cruiser, the passenger seat of the 70 series looked like it was about to eject itself out of the roof of the vehicle. So we're keeping an eye on things here just to see how it all performs, but so far so good. And this actually feels really quite nice and comfortable here, even without a load in the back. Now, the whole purpose of this is later on when we sit down to look at the results, I want to see, based on the peaks and troughs of our accelerometer graph, which one was actually less intensive on the body, because this is a good simulation of what you'll experience if you head up northern part of Australia and you hit some of the corrugations after the wet season. Or if you decide to do a Simpson Desert crossing, it is really just going to put a lot of stress on you as you sort of barrel over those dunes and corrugations at speed. Alrighty, that is lap 1 done. We're going to go through for lap 2 and then head over to the Torture Road. Okay, now, this is where the fun begins. Yeah, this 2 kilometre stretch of road. You're going to see a lot of man boobs bouncing around here as well, by the way. This 2 kilometre stretch of road was designed to go above and beyond what they built for the Belgian pave, because they really wanted to exacerbate Australian conditions here, because they were taking effectively European platforms, changing engines, and then creating sedans, station wagons, and single cab utilities for the Australian market. And I mean, this thing is a horror show. And typically what they would have done is put people in these cars, and they were given time limits as well, because it puts so much stress on your body, so much stress on your mind. Oh, like especially this section here, it's exposed rock, and it is just relentless in terms of the constant just hits that you get to your body, that they would limit how much time you would actually spend in the vehicle. And as a result of that, even though these cars were effectively running 24 hours a day across all of this terrain, it would be with different drivers that they would contract to do this type of work. And then the suspension would get so hot that they would basically have to run these through a water bath at the end of a set number of laps to cool the dampers down. Otherwise they would effectively just explode and leak, and you would lose that damper. So it is crazy stuff. And look, to be honest, this actually doesn't feel too bad. Even without a load in it, actually feels fairly comfortable. So I'll be curious to see how the JAC compares to this. Certainly compared to the 70 series that we tested here last time, it feels far more comfortable. So 70 series though has a bigger payload, so they've got to have a meatier suspension setup. All right, now this bumpy section here, it's another paved road, but this comes with a couple of little whoops through here as well that really throw the vehicle around. Oh man, this is tiring. I know it makes absolutely no sense, but this is genuinely tiring. And I've only done 1 lap of it so far. All right, let's line up for the second lap now. This is crazy. All right. Lap 2 is almost done. Let's hop into the JAC. Okay, let's see how the JAC holds up with this torture session. All right, Belgian pave first, 2 laps, 40 k's an hour, here we go. I can see the tray moving around a fair bit there. But like I said before, it's designed to move independent of the body, to have that flexibility of movement. As you can hear in my voice, it is getting a proper hammering here. All right, but overall it actually feels pretty good on this stuff. I'll be keen to see how it goes on that rougher section, but let's wrap up our 2 laps here and then go hit the harder stuff. And done with the second lap. All right. Oh, it genuinely takes a lot out of you. All right, let's head over to the actual torture road, see how it goes over there. It is really cool to think that, 50 years plus of vehicle engineering was done here some of the sort of hardest testing you'll see on a new car. And back then, that was before they had all the technology they have today to simulate everything that they do. So it would have been a lot more real world testing to figure out how stuff works, as opposed to today where it's all just basically computers and CAD stuff, and everything is just done to be validated later on over a shorter period. So it is, yeah, just remarkable to see that this is how hard cars had it before they were released on the Australian and international markets, because this is genuinely bone-shattering stuff. Even on this rougher section, it's still feeling quite composed. It does not feel, you know, it's really strange. On the open road, it feels a bit busy at times on minor imperfections, but here where you have some serious holes in the road and rocks sticking out of the road, just moving over this stuff really nicely. It's not getting thrown around too much, which means that if you do find yourself on a corrugated stretch of road, you're not going to be constantly correcting the vehicle and trying to manage its direction. So from that point of view, it's going to cope really well with those rougher Australian conditions. Right, here come the cobblestones, and we've got our bump here on the cobblestones as well. We'll see what it feels like through there. Yeah, it's interesting, even with that softer suspension, it is actually holding up quite well over this. Here's our bump through here. Yeah, look, it's actually, it's not too bad. The softness of the suspension isn't affecting it too much in terms of how it feels over this. I can hear Igor's seatbelt in the back there as he holds on for dear life. Oh my God, it's almost over. All right, here we go. And that is done with our first lap. All right, let's go back for a second lap. So yeah, look, I mean, car manufacturers would be doing this day in, day out to ensure their vehicles are durable, but this is always the thing that's in the back of my mind. If you are saving a lot of money on a new vehicle compared to a more established brand like the HiLux v JAC comparison here, will it actually hold up to the type of torture that you're going to put it through? And while this is only a very small selective test, obviously we don't have, 6 months of accelerated durability to test. I mean, this really will unearth a lot of problems in a vehicle very quickly. Stuff like rattles, things like squeaks, those annoying things that you're not going to notice until you've actually driven over roads like this, which takes quite a bit of time to do. But yeah, on first glance, this all feels perfectly fine. And what you'll notice as well with a lot of the Chinese companies is they're willing to put longer warranties on their vehicles. And you look at Toyota, you look at Porsche, 3-year warranty on a Porsche. That is a car that can cost you, $500,000, whereas some of the Chinese manufacturers will do warranties up to 10 years. And that is showing you dedication and an understanding that it's going to last at least 10 years, which to me is a good sign. This is really hard work on your body. All right, and that is lap 2 finally done. All right, we're going to finish this video back at the office when we go over results, so I will see you there, hopefully well rested. Okay, so we are back in the studio. Let me explain the results because, to be honest, they're quite surprising. I'll run you through how we calculated everything first. So basically we had the accelerometer on the iPhone. It's 100 Hertz, so it's really quite accurate in terms of data logging. We had that attached to the seat of each vehicle as we drove over the Belgian pave and also the rough track to give us a data log across both laps. Then what we did is we took the root mean squared of the numbers, and just to give you an idea of what that means, because this is mathematical talk here, the root mean square is a statistical measure that represents the average magnitude of a set of values. In the context of acceleration, it provides a way to quantify the overall intensity of vibrations or movements. The reason we attach the phone to the seat this time is because that's where your bum's going to be sitting, and that is where you're going to feel basically everything that's going on. So start off with the HiLux. This is our first set of results on Belgian pave, and what you can see here is that across 2 laps of the Belgian pave, you had peaks here that were between sort of 10 and 20. This is all done at 40 kilometers an hour. So you can see here lap 1 and, actually this is lap 1
there and there. This section in the middle here is when we do the U-turn at the end of the Belgian pave to then go back down the other side. The other side is ever so slightly smoother, it seems. Well, it was in the HiLux in that run. But what you can see there is that both results are fairly similar, which means speed was fairly consistent, all sort of pretty straightforward there. Now let's jump over to the other side, which is the JAC. Have a look at this. If you look at the two root mean squared values of 4.84 in the HiLux and 4.39 in the JAC, it actually shows you that the JAC was more comfortable. And I did feel, I mean, it's hard to sort of quantify the difference because it's a difference of around 10%. What you can see there with those averages is that the peaks are slightly lower. And it's a difference of around 10% between the two vehicles. And that's probably something that isn't going to be overly significant at the seat of the pants. You will feel slightly more comfortable in the JAC and slightly less fatigued as well, but you're not going to really notice it as a night and day difference. And to me, that's probably good. It shows you that even though the JAC T9 is a much cheaper vehicle, it's not going to feel significantly worse, and in this case it actually feels better, but it's not going to feel any worse than a HiLux does on a rough road. Now, let's get to the other side. So Belgian pave, very good. The other side was the rough road, and this is really a section that shakes the living daylights out of these cars, and this is where we saw the biggest difference. And I'll show you what I mean. If you have a look here at some of the intensity that we felt in the HiLux, sort of went between the 50 and the 100 range there. So fairly sort of decent hits into the car, and it sort of got progressively harder on that exposed rock. And then when we got to the paved area at the end, that's where we felt some really big hits when we had those big changes through the whoops there. So put a lot of work onto the body, and it gave us an average RMS of 10.05. Now, lower is better here, remember that. Watch this, we go over to the JAC. The average was 50% less than the HiLux. That is over the same stretch of road at the same speed on the same day. It is incredible how much of a difference there is there. So you can see there that the peaks are completely different in terms of the actual numbers. You can see there on the y-axis, like it is 50% of it. So look, to be honest, when I was driving it, it felt comfortable, but you're driving them back to back. It's both sort of quite rough regardless of which vehicle you're in. But it does show here that there was, I guess, a 50% comfort difference in the JAC versus the HiLux. And look, I don't know whether 50% difference in the RMS is actually 50% comfort difference. I don't know if they're directly translatable. What this does show you though is that the phone, which was attached to the seat, was experiencing less acceleration due to those bumps as we went over the same stretch of road, which in theory means that your body is going to be feeling less of that acceleration, that up and down motion as the vehicle is traveling. So look, to me, I think it's a pretty conclusive result here that the JAC, both on the Belgian pave and the rough road, is the more comfortable vehicle. Both of the vehicles held up perfectly fine over 2 laps. Obviously 2 laps isn't going to show you accelerated wear over, an estimated 20 years or something like that. But it does show you that from a comfort point of view, you really aren't gaining anything by spending more on a HiLux. Same story when it came to load lugging. I mean, yes, the HiLux did feel slightly better in terms of the acceleration, given that it has more torque and more power. But when it came to actually pulling that load, it didn't feel like there was that much of a difference. So I guess the conclusion is it worth spending significantly more on a proven Japanese brand like Toyota when it comes to a work vehicle like the JAC T9? Look, when it comes to load hauling and comfort, the answer is no. I just don't see that you can justify the big price difference. Like I said in the video, you'd have to step up to an SR5 to match the JAC in terms of features. And that is a big step up, 10, 20, 25 grand. That is a lot of money that you can save. And if you are buying a fleet of these, spread across a fleet of vehicles, it means you can eventually get a number of extra JAC T9s over HiLuxes that end up doing the same job. So that was interesting. Let me know in the comments section below. Do you have any comments on this testing? Do you want us to do something different next time? I'm keen for your feedback. Would you spend extra on the HiLux? I'm keen for your feedback there as well. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel. But until next time, take it easy.